The first enemy to move was also the loudest. Word reached the boss through 3 different channels within the same hour, an unusual thing in itself. When information arrived too neatly, it usually meant someone wanted it to be known. Salvatore Greco had crossed the river. Salvatore was old money, old blood, a man who believed history itself owed him obedience. He had been circling the city for years, testing borders, probing defenses, waiting for the moment when the balance tipped just enough in his favor. Now he sensed it had. Greco's men were seen at the docks, one lieutenant reported, asking questions, offering money. The boss listened without reacting. He had expected this. Weakness always attracted predators. "What kind of questions?" he asked. The lieutenant hesitated. "About you." That was new. Not routes, not shipments, not numbers. Him. Greco wasn't planning a strike yet. He was mapping psychology. The boss dismissed the meeting and stood alone by the window, watching the city pulse below. Somewhere in that web of streets, enemies were moving pieces across a board they believed they understood. They were wrong. Greco hosted a dinner 2 nights later, an open invitation delivered with the kind of arrogance only power could afford. Neutral territory, public venue, no weapons beyond what men carried inside themselves. The boss declined. That alone sent ripples through the underworld. Refusing an invitation was not caution. It was a statement. Greco laughed when he heard. "Let him hide," he told his men. Fear always smells the same. That night, Greco's convoy was delayed on the highway. No ambus, no gunfire, just traffic, an accident ahead. A truck jackknifed at exactly the wrong angle. Lanes blocked, engines idling. Greco sat in the back seat, tapping his fingers impatiently. His phone rang. Unknown number. He ignored it. It rang again. Annoyed, he answered. No one spoke at first. Just breathing. Greco's neared. "You've got 10 seconds. A woman's voice spoke calmly. "You're blocking an ambulance." Greco glanced ahead, irritated. "That's not my problem." "It will be," she said. The line went dead. Minutes later, sirens wailed behind them. A paramedic ran up, shouting that a child in the back needed immediate access through the blocked lanes. Greco hesitated. Every instinct told him to assert control. Instead, something colder passed through him. He waved his driver forward. "Move," he said. The convoy cleared. The ambulance passed. Greco sat back, unsettled. He never figured out why that moment stayed with him longer than it should have. The second enemy struck with silence. A rival syndicate cut off communications entirely. No messages, no warnings, no negotiations. Their shipments vanished mid-route. Entire crews failed to report in. Safe houses were found emptied. Not raided, just abandoned. The boss sent scouts. They returned confused. "No signs of violence," one said. "It's like they left willingly." That was impossible. Men didn't walk away from power unless something frightened them more than death. Then one of the scouts brought back a detail he hadn't meant to mention. Dogs wouldn't enter one of the houses, he said. They just stood outside, whining. The room went still. The boss dismissed everyone. He poured himself a drink and didn't touch it. Greco moved again, this time with intent. He ordered a small but symbolic strike, an attack on one of the boss's peripheral businesses. Not enough to provoke war, just enough to test response time. The building burned through the night. No casualties. Greco made sure of that. This wasn't about blood. It was about humiliation. The boss arrived before dawn. Char beams. Waitress, smoke still curling into the morning air. A folded napkin lay on the hood of his car. No words this time, just a single dot of ash pressed into the fabric. He closed his eyes briefly. Greco thought he was sending a message. He had no idea one had already been answered. Greco's chief enforcer disappeared 2 days later. Not abducted, not killed, just absent. He left his house for work and never arrived. His car was found parked neatly on a side street. Doors locked, engine cool, wallet on the seat. Inside the glove compartment was a receipt from a cafe. Time-stamped. Greco stared at it for a long time. He didn't remember stopping for coffee that day. That night, Greco dreamed of a woman sitting across from him in a quiet room. She didn't threaten him. She didn't even speak. She just waited. He woke drenched in sweat. The boss received his next update from an unlikely source. A rival accountant requested a private meeting. Neutral ground. No weapons. No names exchanged. The man looked exhausted, older than his years. She told us to stop, the accountant said quietly. The boss said nothing. She didn't threaten. She didn't negotiate. She just explained what would happen if we didn't. What would happen? The boss asked. The accountant swallowed. That we would survive, but nothing we touched would. The boss leaned back slowly. Where is she now? He asked. The accountant shook his head. She never stays. Greco broke. He demanded a meeting. Not with the boss. With her. The message arrived through 6 intermediaries, stripped of pride by the time it reached its destination. The boss read it once, then burned it. That night, Greco stood alone in his penthouse, staring out over the city that no longer felt like his. His phone vibrated. Unknown number. He answered without speaking. "You're done," the woman said. His voice shook despite himself. "Who are you?" Silence. Then, "You already know." The call ended. The next morning, Greco announced his retirement. No speeches, no handovers, no power plays. He left the city quietly, escorted by men who no longer met his eyes. The underworld watched in disbelief. Empires didn't end like that, unless something greater had passed through them. The boss stood alone in his office that night, city lights reflecting off the glass. He hadn't fired a shot. He hadn't ordered a hit. And yet, his enemies had collapsed. Not through violence, through restraint. On his desk lay one final napkin. This one held a single sentence. Balance restored. Don't test it again. The boss folded it carefully. He understood now. This wasn't protection. This was oversight. And somewhere beyond his reach, she continued moving, unseen, correcting the world quietly, leaving behind men who would never again confuse power with noise. The city didn't know it was holding its breath. From above, everything looked the same. Traffic crawling through intersections, neon signs flickering on wet pavement, windows glowing softly in high-rise apartments. The illusion of order held. Inside the boss's estate, nothing moved. The guards were still at their posts. Cameras still fed clean images to the control room. Doors were locked, alarms armed, and yet the boss couldn't shake the feeling that the night had already begun without him. He sat alone in his office, lights low, a single lamp casting long shadows across the desk. The city stretched beyond the windows, distant and quiet. The folded napkin lay in the drawer. He hadn't touched it all day. At exactly midnight, the house exhaled. Not a sound, a sensation, like pressure equalizing. The boss looked up. The monitors didn't flicker. The lights didn't dim. But something had changed. He knew it the same way he'd known his son wasn't breathing before anyone else said it out loud. He stood slowly. The door across the room opened. She stepped inside. No guards shouted. No alarm screamed. She didn't rush. She didn't hesitate. She walked as though the space had been waiting for her all along. She wore dark clothes, simple and unremarkable. No weapon visible. No tension in her posture. She stopped 3 steps inside the room and waited. The boss didn't reach for his gun. "Sit," she said. Her voice was calm, unraised, almost polite. He sat. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The clock on the wall ticked softly, marking time in a room where time had lost its authority. "You shouldn't be here," the boss said finally. She tilted her head slightly. "I was invited. I didn't invite you." She glanced toward the drawer. "You did." Silence again. "How many of my men did you kill?" he asked. "None," she replied. He studied her face, searching for something. Arrogance, satisfaction, threat. There was nothing there. "Then how did you do it?" he asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she asked, "Why did you take the boy?" The question landed heavier than any accusation. "He owed me," the boss said. "That's how this world works." She nodded once. "That's how your world works." "In yours," he challenged. She met his gaze. "Mine has rules." "What rules?" She didn't respond immediately. When she did, her voice was lower. Not softer, heavier. "No child is leverage," she said. "No innocent pays for speed. And no man survives twice if he forgets that." The boss leaned back, exhaling slowly. "You saved my son." "Yes." "So this is repayment?" he asked. "A lesson." She considered him. "This is correction." Minutes passed, or hours. The boss wasn't sure. Outside, the city continued, unaware that an empire was being weighed inside a quiet room. "You could have destroyed me," he said. She nodded. "I could have. Why didn't you?" She looked toward the window, then back at him. "Because you learned. And if I hadn't," she didn't blink, "you wouldn't be here." The boss felt the truth of it settle into his bones. Not as fear, as certainty. "Will you kill me?" he asked. "No," she said. "Why?" "Because you'll do better alive." "I don't want your empire," she continued. "I don't want your money. I don't want your loyalty." "What do you want?" he asked quietly. She stood. "I want you to remember this night," she said. "Every time you're tempted to forget what breathing sounds like when it stops." She walked toward the door. "Wait," the boss said. She paused. "What happens now?" he asked. She looked back at him once. "You go on," she said, carefully. Then she left. The guards found the boss at dawn. He was still seated at his desk, eyes open, untouched. Nothing in the room was disturbed. No signs of entry. No signs of exit. On the desk lay a folded napkin. This one bore no writing. The boss dismissed his men without explanation. Later that morning, he stood beside his son's bed, listening to the soft rhythm of breathing that had once nearly stopped. He placed the napkin in the fire. It burned cleanly, completely. That day, he canceled 3 operations, redirected 2 shipments, released a man he would have punished before. No one questioned him. The city adjusted. Somewhere beyond its borders, a woman walked alone beneath the pale light of morning. Her steps were unhurried, her face unreadable. She didn't look back, because this night, like so many before it, was already behind her. And somewhere, someday, another breath would stop. Another room would panic. Another man would forget the rules. And when that moment came, she would arrive the same way she always did. Quietly, certain, unseen until it was far too late.